4 full-time staff and interns. So just a little bit additional background there. Let's see what else to mention. And I guess it's important to say where we focus our time. We really, consumer education is the main focus of ours. We run a number of events throughout the year, but that connect folks to their farm. We also do a big collaborative marketing campaign, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. We have a food access program. It's called the Partner Shares program, where we provide assistance. So it's a cost sharing program. So we provide assistance towards the purchase of a CSA share for eligible families, also for eligible organizations. And we have a very robust grower education program where we have a series of grower gatherings and field days throughout the year, as well as field research that we conduct, particularly focused on impacts of climate change at this point. And we also do workplace CSA, which Tim actually will talk quite a bit about within the Kentucky region. And I guess just one other note is our range, or we don't have any specific geographic bounds for who's involved in the coalition. It's really whomever chooses to apply farmer-wise. And so currently we have farms in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois. So there you go. Thanks for letting me introduce myself. Tim?
Yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate everybody joining in today. I'm Tim Woods, Extension Professor in the Department of Ag Economics at the University of Kentucky, and I've worked with CSA for many years. Done some national projects trying to evaluate some of the innovative models and trends with some folks at AMS a few years ago with Debbie Trop, but have really we've done a lot of work with our folks here in Kentucky as well, doing some things around CSA to the workplace. So I look forward to having a chance to talk about that. But we have really benefited from being part of this CSA Innovation Network, the farmers that we work here in Kentucky. And Garrett, appreciate you kind of pulling this together to share a little bit about what the Innovation Network is, and just the kind of idea sharing and resource sharing that we've been able to cultivate here. And we're hoping that we're onto a good thing and setting a platform for a lot of good information sharing going forward.
Perfect. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Tim. I think we have enough folks in here that we can allow others that joined from the conference to also introduce themselves, maybe give us a little bit of information about where they work, where they're from, and maybe how their work has kind of intersected with the CSA model, or where their interest lies in joining this session specifically. So Angela, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, Angela Gardner with the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service. I work in the local, regional, and safe foods department. And I've just always been an advocate for local foods in Arkansas, and I just wanted to learn more. The title really caught my eye because I thought it would be related to COVID, but I'm really fascinated to hear what other disruptions are going on in CSA world. We're working on, at the extension in Arkansas, we're working on a project to create 3 shared use commercial kitchen spaces in rural counties in Arkansas at the county fairgrounds. So we've had a little hiccup with opening, but our managers are trained. We have about 15 clients that are wanting to start, which is great because I know a lot of people don't have extra cash just sitting around because there are so many unknowns. So it's really exciting to see that people are wanting to launch a food product. So we're getting started with that hopefully in June, and we'll have some more exciting news to share next year. So thank you for putting this together, Garrett, and it's nice to hear from you, Carrie and Timothy, and I'm ready to learn more.
Perfect. Thanks, Angela. Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Spencer. I'm with the University of Kentucky. I actually work with Tim. I'm brand new in the extension service, so I'm just really trying to soak it up and learn as much as I can about, everything that we're doing to try to move forward in the midst of everything that's going on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Jan.
Hey, I'm Jan Steen. I work with K-State Research and Extension here in Kansas. And the program I work with is called the Kansas Pride Program. We work with a lot of communities across the state, mostly rural communities. And a lot of that has to deal with food access issues. So I was just interested in this topic for that reason, to see if I can get any information to share.
Perfect. Thanks for joining. And Digit.
Hi, I'm Digit McCracken. I'm with Oregon State University Extension, and my department is Open Campus, and specifically we work with college and career readiness and degree completion, as well as community and economic development. And the reason this caught my eye was because we have a newly built hydroponic greenhouse in our city, and we're working towards having some food security in a food desert in a very rural part of Oregon. And I thought this might be interesting, thinking about the greenhouse, and they've just started selling produce online. So it's kind of a fun topic, and I'm ready to learn more.
Perfect. Thanks for joining. I see one other person here, I think that was my our colleague Brian Raisin, who was doing some troubleshooting on figuring out why the link didn't work. So we might have some other people trickle in as we go here if folks are able to get on here that had planned to. But we're going to go ahead and move forward. Thanks everybody for introducing. Just the next slide. So just wanted to briefly talk about kind of how this network came to be, and kind of the role that I played and that Extension played in kind of working through this and birthing this CSA Innovation Network. So really, it's really rooted in this idea that there were several different organizations working all across the country that had been building coalitions. As Carrie mentioned, their organization, FairShare, CSA Coalition. There was other organizations in Portland, Oregon, and Hudson Valley area of New York, and another slide talks through kind of all the different organizations that are initially involved in the CSA Innovation Network. But we really kind of, all these coalitions started, working in the CSA space and trying to build programs where they were supporting their CSA farmers, really working in that CSA support organization avenue, and really realized that, we were oftentimes reaching out to other organizations to say like, hey, can you help? We have this project or we have this grant fund, trying to figure out how exactly you developed this thing. What can you share with us, or what can we learn from you? I know in our instance, looks like we have another person joining, Jairus. Oh, great to have Jairus on. In our instance, in my instance, in my work in Michigan, we received a grant back in 2014. And to kind of build out a collaborative marketing project with CSA farmers that I work with in Western Michigan. And, the first contact we had after we got that funding was to reach out to FairShare, CSA Coalition, to say like, hey, we know you have done this, how can you help us, or what information can you provide that can help us kind of build this out for ourselves? So that really kind of started our relationship with FairShare. And then through that, FairShare actually received an FMP, Farm Market Promotion Program grant in 2015, where they said, we've been sharing all this information out with these different organizations all across the country. Maybe we can more formalize this and formalize, the work that we've been doing into toolkits, work with other areas, other organizations to develop resources and look at what we're doing. And then out of that 2015 grant, when that was kind of wrapping up in 2018, it kind of looked like, well, there's all these organizations, we're kind of loosely organized, been communicating with each other, seeing the benefits of that communication, and really saw the need for that national network to be created. So this network was kind of developed through another Farm Market Promotion Program grant that FairShare took the lead on and developed in partnership with a few other organizations, University of Kentucky being one of them, California Association for Family Farms being the other, and then several regional collaborators, of which I work with one, the West Michigan Growers Group. So really, we saw this network as a need to meet, and to provide information and resources to CSA farmers. We've been witnessing, as people that have worked with CSA farmers over the years, kind of a trends that we were troubled by in the CSA space. So, maturing sales for traditional CSA. So a lot of the CSA farmers we work with were really kind of, having trouble reaching that next group of customers, seeing their retention numbers decline, or seeing them have less and less ability to bring on new customers each year. There's been some rapid changes in the CSA market, and new people entering the space with different models that maybe aren't under that traditional definition of a CSA. We saw that a lot of these efforts to support CSA farmers were very isolated. And then just, looking at the success of regional international networks, kind of having our own regional networks within all of these different coalitions and partners, and seeing that model really be beneficial to farmers, thinking, we can expand that to a national level. So it's really about serving technical assistance providers, as well as beginning farmers, and beginning and advanced growers, and then serving consumers, and really building out, what CSA customers' resources are out there, and how we can best make, the CSA experience a successful one for new and returning customers. And these are just an example of some of the partners that have been involved. As I said, the Community Alliance with Family Farms, I always get that name wrong, FairShare CSI Coalition, and the University of Kentucky were kind of the three main partners as part of the grant. And if you're familiar with the FMPP program, the Farm Market Promotion Program, the actual application kind of calls for these two different categories of partners and collaborators. So the partners are more heavily involved, and then the collaborators, which were these other organizations kind of located around the country. And that's kind of where I came into the network as a collaborator with the West Michigan Growers Group. We all kind of work supporting the work of building the network, supporting the work of resource development and resource identification, but haven't been as involved in the actual, development of the grant and kind of management of the grant, if that makes sense. But we're fortunate to have, these partner organizations and collaborators from areas all across the country. We obviously do have some work to do in kind of the central, Mountain West, and the southeast part of the country to bring some more folks in, and that's definitely something that we're working on. I think I'm going to pass it over to Carrie for this slide.
So that was a great background on the birth of the Innovation Network. And so here's how we've spent about 1.5 years now getting the networks, the initial structure figured out, and really ironing out what it is that we're focusing on. And this was one of our primary initial tasks, was to determine, jointly, what exactly is our focus, our purpose. And so you'll see it written here. And just as Garrett has mentioned, really, we decided that idea sharing was very crucial, reducing silos, increasing collaboration, decreasing duplicative efforts, and just all in order to strengthen the CSA movement and model across the U.S. And so that is the purpose that we've come up with. And on the next slide, you'll see another. Can I advance them, Garrett, or do you have to do them? Perfect. Thank you, Garrett. On this slide, you'll see we actually have come up with a definition of CSA as well. So there are plenty of definitions out there. One of those problems, right, where there's lots of definitions, but none really fit exactly the purpose or the structure that we were looking for. And so we workshopped this together. I'd say the good challenge that we had was to make sure that we could encapsulate all the different models and types of CSA that are out there. We didn't want, had to be careful not to be exclusive, yet also still be specific enough to be clear about what it was that we determined to be CSA. So you'll see the definition that we came up with here was CSA connects individuals and local farms in a mutually supportive relationship. In a CSA, people become members of a farm in exchange for recurrent shares of the seasonal harvest. This relationship transcends the usual commercial transaction by having farmers and members share the risks and benefits inherent to agriculture. CSA provides consumers with a deep connection to their food and the people who grow it. And I think that picture right there really drives that point home. Just that very special direct producer to consumer connection on the farm in this example, and one that's has consistency to it. So that's those were some of the foundational pieces that we tackled. In addition to, I think the next slide actually is going to provide a bit of guidance here on other things that we've determined in the last year and a half and done. We not that far into the grant period, we convened all of the leaders of the different coalitions that Garrett shared with everybody. All those folks that are part of the Innovation Network came together in Kentucky, and we did a lot of pre-work in advance. We did a lot of data combing, Kentucky in particular, in terms of what is it that CSA farmers and TA providers were really interested in learning about? What is it there that, what did they want to learn about, and where did they feel that there was a lot of gaps in resources and knowledge? And so we, took collectively, put a big scan out into the world and pulled in as much data as we could, and dialed things down into 4 different working groups for the Innovation Network to focus on, which I'll touch on, and we'll all touch on in just a little bit here, how the cookie crumbled there. And in addition, we really figured out what the structure of the network would be. This was brand new to all of us. None of us had started a national network before. Definitely we had folks in there that had started coalitions or, regional coalitions, state or maybe more local networks, but nothing on a national scale. And just an interesting concept where we were all working remote or collaborating remote with one another, which now is the norm in the face of COVID, which is just interesting. But for us, it was sort of a newer landscape that wasn't the norm yet. So we decided that we would meet monthly or bi-monthly for partners. Collaborators would join on calls we started with quarterly. Basically, we determined we had this call schedule that was great, but we made it more frequent. We decided there's just so much work to do that we ended up talking more frequently with one another than we had initially determined, because there's just a lot to talk about, digest, and put together. And there's one other thing. Oh, and then our working groups meet monthly. So everybody that's part of the Innovation Network participates in a working group. The main outcomes or objectives that we're working on together as the core folks behind the network is really curating resources that exist. Finding, for example, low-income food access, which is an area actually that Garrett works on closely. There are a lot of resources out there on what low-income food access looks like in the CSA world. There are still gaps, absolutely, but there are a lot of really good resources. So it's just hard to find. I'm sure folks here on the phone can relate, or on the call, that you Google something and you end up with so many options that you just don't know where to go to first. And so that's one of our main goals, is to determine which kind of cut out the noise, determine which resources make the most sense to make put in the forefront for folks to look at, and then actually pull together a training on these resources. So it's really easy for somebody that says, hey, we've got this group of growers, we've got a group of, maybe it's not even CSA growers, but people that practice a similar model. They say, we want to work in the food access realm, but we don't know where to start. How do we want to structure this? And we know there's so many different ways to go about it. So the idea is they can tune into this presentation, find out about different models, figure out which one is the best fit for their organization or group, and then dive into the specific resources from that point that can give even further information. In addition, I've mentioned identifying gaps a couple of times, so that's a big part of what we're doing, is seeing where are there really actually not many resources whatsoever. One of those areas that we discovered was online the comparison between different online ordering platforms or customization software for farmers. So that's something that really a major impetus to get that out and done was COVID, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's an area we'd already identified was a need. And then COVID happened and it was boom, we got it done in pretty short order there. Actually, it had happened prior to that too a little bit, but what else to mention? We have a website. That's a big outcome that we've done in the last year, is that we've created a website. It's CSA Innovation Network .org. I think we're going to do some screen shares of it in a little bit from now together, so you can take a peek at it. But on the website is where those resources, it's an initial library at this point. We're going to make it more, have a greater number of resources that are indexed in a pretty savvy way forthcoming here. That's one of our next big projects, is to really dial that resource library in. But we have an initial library up. We also have a discussion forum where anybody can go in and just pop a question they have. You know, this is something that I'd really encourage you all to take a look at. You have to have an account, but it's very easy to sign up for. And it's great because then you just get notifications when somebody posts on there. And there's a lot of relevant, great topics on there. And we are very excited to really get that more populated here. It's a newer resource for us, and we're very excited. We think there's a lot of potential for really solid information sharing on it. And one other thing I was going to mention, we have an upcoming training series, probably to be launched within a month or two, but our goal at this point is to have a monthly training / discussion topic every month, and that those trainings will be provided by folks within the network, but also beyond. So eventually, if you stay tuned in, hopefully, into the work of the Innovation Network, and you have a relevant training or have a colleague doing a training, that's something that we can eventually, we'd love to fold in. We want this just to be a really open and rich sharing community. Garrett, we can move slides if you're able to. Okay, so I mentioned creating those working groups. We came together again. This is a picture of our group process all together in Kentucky. It was pretty fascinating. We went really fast to start with, and then we hit a point where we just couldn't, it just wasn't quite manifesting. We couldn't quite figure out what the working groups were. We took a break for the day. We came back, and boom, within like 10 minutes, we decided, just needed a little bit of space to think, and it became very clear we started with what the 3 working groups ought to focus on. So Garrett, if you wouldn't mind switching to the next slide. The working groups that we settled on are CSA Innovations, which I'll talk about more in depth in just a moment here, Equity and Access, and CSA in the Workplace. We basically then divided between expertise within the network, the partners at the table, who would be within each working group, and each working group just to figured out their own style of how they would communicate, how often, and what their specific outcomes would be. However, an agreed upon outcome between our working groups was kind of what I've already mentioned, was creating trainings around existing resources and gaps. And also just really encouraging robust partner sharing. It's something that we've all determined was, I think Garrett mentioned with those earlier grants where we brought together the different leads of the coalitions. Just having informal discussion on a regular basis has really been enriching for everybody at the table, and just been really great to just be able to casually ask, oh, how did you do this? How did you do that? And so that's a big part of our calls as well. And something that we are determining how to make to have happen on a larger level in the future, to have anybody that would like to attend do. So those are our next steps, is to further determine what the structure the network will be. Oops, sorry if you heard that noise. All right, we can move into the innovations working group with that. So let's see. The innovations working group really is focused on member retention, the need for technology, how that's, how technology is influencing the changes to the CSA model, and vice versa, how changes to the CSA model are influencing technology. Just really recognizing that there is a lot of change afoot with how farmers are responding to what consumers are interested in, pre-COVID certainly, and definitely in the face of COVID, which we'll get into in a bit. And also, they really focus in the innovations working group on peer learning and really talking about the nuts and bolts of CSA networks and how they're formed. And eventually we hope to have a working group within the network that actually is to create and provide support services for creating helping support other areas that would like to create some kind of coalition or network because of the strength that can be found within that model. Let's see. And for those folks, maybe I should just mention some of the changes that are happening to the CSA model. I'm not sure everyone's familiarity with CSA, but the traditional model of CSA is when you receive just like basically a farmer's choice box. The farmer decides, what's best in season that day or that week and harvest that, and the member just gets whatever that is. There's been a lot of shifts towards customization of different varieties, whether that means you go to a farmer's market stand where the farmer is and you get to choose at a farmer's market stand or on the farm, and you get to choose a certain number of items yourself, and a few are standard, or you can potentially go online each week and literally choose everything that goes into your box. There's a heck of a lot of different variation within there, it's kind of great because farmers can choose what kind of model fits for them. Number one, what do they want to be doing? And then number two, then the consumers can choose which farm is a good fit for them and what they're looking for. But yes, there's a lot of complexities that come with that, including an increased need for technology, a lot of choices there for farmers, and then also cost to consider. Okay, Garrett, can we switch to the next slide, please? The Innovations Working Group to date has conducted a lot of workshops and farmer-to-farmer learning experiences, particularly the last couple of months. Claire Strader, one of my colleagues here at FairShare, has been leading weekly Zoom calls with any grower that wants to participate. Typically, the majority of participants have been from the upper Midwest just because of where we're based, but we've promoted the workshops across the US and have had good attendance from other areas as well. But in the topic of each of those grower gatherings has been determined by the farmers, actually. Though at the end of each grower gathering, they say what they want to focus on. And so some of the topics have included how to keep your employees safe on the farm with COVID, how to modify your CSA pickup site, farmers market best practices, because the screenshot of all the folks on Zoom was a call on comparing the different online ordering platforms. So it's just been really, really well received, and farmers have just been glowing about how impactful and helpful it has been for them to be able to just go on and talk with their peers and have an open and collaborative space to ask questions, to hear from one another. And it's pretty no frills. If there's a presentation component to it, it's pretty basic, and the majority of the time is spent learning, discussing with one another. Okay, so that's the Innovations Working Group. Then the Marketing Working Group. This working group actually manifested more recently in about the last half year. We realized that the Marketing Working Group focuses, I'd say, in two main areas. One is branding the actual innovation network itself. That's something that we realized as we kind of got the ball rolling, we got our website up and going. We were like, okay, well, it's time for us to have ongoing communications. We need to actually brand what we look like to get our word out there. So that's a big focus for this Marketing Working Group, is finding the voice and the appearance of the innovation network. On the other side, though, the Marketing Working Group really focuses on both creating trainings and similar to the other working group. So there was a Canva tutorial that one of our colleagues in the Innovation Network, Corinna Bench, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a farmer marketing professional that serves CSA farmers in an incredible way. She's got a national reach, and just people that know her love her. She's so savvy and fabulous, and we're really lucky to have her on our team. She can whip together a training on marketing topics like this. So she is doing trainings a la the Canva tutorial. I'm not sure if you folks have heard of the CSA Day, but was started by Simon Huntley of Small Farm Central, now of Harvey. And the day or the week, which we'll be turning it into, is typically it has been seen as the most popular time of the year for folks to sign up for a CSA. And so it's become a big collaborative marketing push nationally. A lot of farmers sign up to receive marketing materials for CSA Day so that they can really have a strong call to action for their consumers, for their customers and members to sign up, whether it's, to retain folks or to get new folks involved. And so Simon actually handed off CSA Day to the CSA Innovation Network this past year. And so we've got big plans. It was a good launch this year. We've got even greater plans for this next year. Like I mentioned, we're going to make it a whole week-long endeavor, but its whole goal is for a small number of people to make a lot of materials, marketing materials for a large number of people that can just plug and play, pick these graphic templates up and the language up and just, post it out into the world, and to have this strong call to action on a particular date and time, like people really respond to deadlines. So that's something that the marketing working group's working on as well. And then one other on the next slide, main focus for this marketing working group this coming year is to, which kind of relates to the CSA Day piece, but is to come up with a national marketing campaign that the network puts together. And then again, anybody can plug and play the materials that come out of this effort. And so I have two screenshots here. They're examples of what FairShare has done. We've done a collaborative marketing campaign for our coalition the past couple of years. Another member organization of the Innovation Network, the Hudson Valley CSA Coalition, which is nested within Glenwood in New York, if folks are familiar with Glenwood. They also have done a collaborative marketing campaign the last couple of years. Theirs is kind of fun. They do riffs on the acronym CSA, like consume something amazing today, CSA. They do a whole bunch of displays on the CSA term. That's the tack they've taken with their campaign. FairShare last year did a campaign that had a tagline, "That's CSA," and we've broke down. We basically did a bunch of research. We pulled from a number of research studies to find out what values really resonated with CSA consumers, why they wanted to be part of a CSA. And we found that it broke down into 4 categories, which briefly were sustainability and environmentalism. The farmer-member relationship really resonated with folks. The, of course, I'm blanking. Healthy food, eating healthy, nutritious food, and then also supporting a local business. So we came up with a bunch of mini taglines and connected them to that CSA. So like food from a farmer, that's CSA. Was the farmer member relationship campaign. So we did a bunch of graphic templates associated with that. We came up with a bunch of different marketing materials that farmers could use, whether it was social media ads. We also did a big mass direct mailing postcard on behalf of farmers in our organization. So sent to zip codes that farmers were looking to find new members, and a whole bunch of other products that came from that. But I just mentioned these as inspiration for how we intend to tackle this national marketing campaign, is that we're going to be working with the marketing professional, similarly looking at what resonates with consumers and coming up with some good graphics and templates that both TA providers, coalitions, networks can use, as well as farmers themselves. So we're pretty excited about that. It's a pretty neat thing to think about how much impact I think that just a small number of people can have for a large number of people, and that's just really the goal, is to just take whatever work it is some entity might be doing, some coalition might be doing, and just make it available to everybody, because we understand that makes the whole movement stronger. And I think CSA is really about collaboration and community, and this is what this network is really trying to build on. So. All right, with that, I will hand off to Tim for that's just another example of marketing campaign materials. I forgot, popped that in there at the last minute. All right, Tim is gonna enlighten us about the CSA in the Workplace Working Group.
There we go, helps if I unmute myself. Yeah, so one of the kind of innovative areas that was identified in our original planning as national network was this opportunity for expanding CSA in the workplace. And I know our small coalition of farms in Kentucky, the Kentucky FairShare Coalition, was really inspired by a lot of the work that the FairShare Coalition folks had done, where midway through their program, they had developed a really innovative program in collaboration with insurance companies that were working with employers, providing CSA rebates to employees that were part of that program, and just thought that was a phenomenal idea, and what a great opportunity and a different kind of a market channel to kind of build some things out. And so our folks in Kentucky just dove into that idea and really made a lot of effort in terms of gathering some background information, lots of kind of feasibility analysis, and just lots of resource sharing. We loaded up a van full of farmers and hauled them up to Wisconsin to visit with the FairShare folks, and just very hungry for information. And having this kind of a network like this, where ideas could be shared very practically across communities of folks, just absolutely sparked some great ideas that our folks here in Kentucky have seized on, and has really turned into this really national evaluation of opportunity. Go ahead, Garrett. One of the things that has been kind of a driver in thinking about CSA to the workplace is the big growth we've seen in the United States around per capita health expenditures. This is just some data that unpacks that just a little bit, but as employers are looking at providing their employees with health insurance, they've got various wellness in the workplace kinds of programs that they're trying to provide to help their employees move toward healthier lifestyles, as well as embracing philosophically more and more these ideas of corporate social responsibility, and what does it look like for an employer to be a leader in the public health space with their organization, with their employees. All of this was really creating a very rich background and opportunity for more CSA to the workplace opportunity. Go ahead, Garrett. And so the CSA model itself fits really, really well into this workplace space, where you've got an ongoing thinking of it as a benefit to employees. You've got this weekly, seasonal activity that can really lead to some meaningful, sustained food style impacts, lifestyle changes around food and diet, but also really not just impacting the employee, but can impact a whole household of consumers there through these kinds of programs. Many of our universities have student-run farms. The University of Kentucky has one, and actually has a CSA that they operate off of that, teaching the students not just in the sustainable ag program about production agriculture issues, but all the nuts and bolts of how to plan, manage, market, promote a CSA. And a number of our farmers now that are out there as part of our local network are graduates out of this program. So lots of opportunities, I think, for universities to play a really unique kind of a role in cultivating these kinds of networks, but also setting the stage for building these kinds of wellness programs into the university benefit system itself. Go ahead, Garrett. And so, just thinking about the employee impact, this is one of my favorite pictures of folks here. They're out. You can see a family there in the middle. It's not just the employee that is being impacted, it's their whole family that comes to pick up product, and the opportunity through a wellness program like this to really have some impact out into the community and kind of underscore the community aspect of what CSA is really trying to be about. And when we think about measuring impacts, how many employees are part of a program, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how many individuals within a community may be impacted. Go ahead, Garrett. So a number of different kinds of models that folks have looked at around the CSA to workplace concept. And this is sort of the traditional one. It's not brand new. Workplace drop-offs, for example, have been around for a while. Many farms have been doing, CSA farms have been doing something like this where they might have multiple drop sites around a city, and a workplace may agree to particularly host one. And you may even have some employers that will do some specific promotion of a farm that they're working with in their workplace itself, maybe in newsletters. So this kind of traditional one farm to one employer model. But we saw, go ahead, Garrett, to the next slide, this kind of an opportunity to really move this to another level, where looking at the FairShare model that you can see down there below, where you have multiple farms, 40 to 50 farms in their case, that are serving as working together as a coalition and able to do some things together as this multiple group of farms to be able to offer a much more compelling product to these different employers. And in the case of the folks in Wisconsin, they're collaborating with a shared insurance provider to provide rebates back to employees that in their case could get something like a $200 rebate toward a CSA share that would come from one of the participating farms in the FairShare coalition. We saw that a similar kind of, just a slightly different model that we looked at in terms of this coalition building toward employers here in Kentucky. Our farms currently are serving primarily employers in the Lexington and Louisville area here in central Kentucky. But in this case, rather than working through an insurance provider, it's really been working with individual employers themselves, and typically trying to target employers that are self-insured, that are really keenly aware of the healthcare costs, maybe having their own wellness programs that they've got for their employees. We created this what we think is kind of an innovative model to sustain this coalition, where the farms themselves actually will pay a $20 per share farm fee, but the employers also are paying an employer service fee to sustain this coalition. There's a lot of work. Carrie will tell you firsthand. There's a lot of work getting these farms and employers together and keeping up with the education about what is CSA, the benefits of CSA, how to work out just all the logistics. But it's creating such an opportunity to move this whole CSA to the workplace to another level through these kinds of collaborations. Go ahead, Garrett. This is an example of our current employer partner list in Kentucky. It just started out initially with the University of Kentucky, the City of Lexington. Those were the kind of primary partners there. But as the leading employers have seen success with this program and have kind of become more comfortable building this out, they've continued to expand and become champions of this kind of a program to other employers. And folks in wellness and benefits programs talk with each other. And when a program starts to take a lead, and this is my pitch for folks that are, especially here, wearing kind of an extension hat, a really neat opportunity for the university to play a role in terms of a leading institution in public health and innovation around health and wellness, in linking these kinds of CSA programs to university employees. And that's really been where we focused a lot of our attention on the impacts and benefits of these kinds of programs for the employees that have been part of the University of Kentucky. Go ahead, Garrett. So we're expanding the number of employers that are participating in this. But the other thing that we see is that employers themselves, as they get more comfortable and confident with how the program is helping their employees, they're expanding their participation in these programs as well. Go ahead, Garrett. One of the things that's a little bit of a challenge that I'll just sort of pull these last thoughts together around the CSA to the workplace idea is that employees in a workplace are different from your traditional CSA shareholder. They have different values, different buying values, different food and lifestyle related values. This is from a series of consumer surveys that we had done some years ago, and just looking at, for example, this very traditional CSA shareholder, there places an extremely high value on all aspects of community, but also a very high value on things about environment, about agricultural heritage. Those things are somewhat important to the folks in the health and wellness space, as you can see there. Go ahead, Garrett, to the next slide. But in terms of the things that are driving food choice by these different consumer groups, we've got these here ordered in order of least important to most important, according to the traditional CSA shareholder that you can see there. While they're roughly the same for the health and wellness kind of employee, there are definitely some distinct differences. And a couple of things that are highlighted there in the orange, particularly that are somewhat more important and different, are issues about having a specific health concern, wanting to lose weight. Those are the reasons why those folks are in the health and wellness space thinking about their food. And so promotion and sharing of these ideas and getting our folks engaged out of the workplace into the CSA space takes just some different messaging. There are different values that they have. And so that's another part of what we're trying to develop kind of as a network, are these kinds of marketing, messaging, promotion ideas about what is CSA. And CSA is so multidimensional. It can do a lot of different things and provide a lot of different values to participation, but people are looking for different things out of it. We just need to be mindful of that. Go ahead, Garrett. One way to kind of think about the differences in CSA values, if you think of kind of a core group, your traditional CSA folks, and then you expand out to a mid-level group that folks that are generally interested in CSA, but maybe they've participated once or twice, out to this kind of periphery group of folks that maybe have not even heard of this before. You've got the traditional single farm CSA that has been very dialed into servicing these core consumers. You have multi-farm CSAs and other kinds of local food aggregators that are also looking to service that similar kind of a shareholder consumer. Those consumers have their own kinds of characteristics in terms of the value proposition. The core consumer tends to be much more very intentionally relationship-based, much less price sensitive, and there are lots of other things aside from price that are really driving their purchase choice. But as we think about promoting CSA to new employees, especially those that haven't heard about CSA before, go ahead, Garrett, to the next slide. Part of the challenge that we face then is how do we move folks from being this kind of entry-level, first time trying a CSA, first year, first season experience with it, especially as employers are expanding the number of employees involved. How do we move them into this core value space that's occupied by a more traditional shareholder? Farms really want the employees to come back year after year and to have it be a long-term lifestyle change that's part of how they think about food. Go ahead, Garrett. So just a couple of things that our folks have done. Here's just a cast of our tiny little coalition, Gary. It's not anywhere near as big as the 40, 50 farms there in Wisconsin, but continuing to expand out the number of farms that are involved. We'll certainly look to add a few more farms here this season. I think it's fair to say, Carrie, the FairShare Coalition started just like this, with just a tiny handful of farms like this, but working together to build an opportunity that they really couldn't pursue as effectively just as individual farms. Go ahead, Garrett. So in an effort to try to move toward this stronger relationship and communicate about what CSA is to new employees, having things like meet and greet events where people can get out, visit with the farms, talk to them a little bit about their products, maybe a little bit about their farm location, some of the things that folks might be expecting with their share. Go ahead, Garrett. Having things like, what do I do with this product? And we actually have kind of a neat thing here at the University of Kentucky with an education kitchen that allows employees that are participating in this to come in, learn about the products that are available there this week, have a little cooking class opportunity. Vanessa Oliver here, pictured in the middle, has led the charge. She's an employee with the UK Health and Wellness Program, registered dietitian, and people can come and learn how to make their own pesto, how to make pickles, all kinds of great things, very practical things that keep CSA interesting, fun, keep people from being paralyzed out of what to do with things. I just got in my CSA this week, garlic scapes, and coming to find out that I can make a really nice garlic scape-based hummus. But just needing a little bit of help and a little bit of direction on what to do with some of these products to kind of keep excitement and energy into being part of a CSA. Go ahead, Garrett. So lunch and learns, we will bring folks together during a meal. A lot of times in these lunch and learns, we'll actually have a chef from a local restaurant that will be there to do a demonstration themselves about how to prepare something using some local products. And here again, giving the farms an opportunity to share out what it is that their CSA is about to the employees that are participating. Go ahead, Garrett. Go ahead. So toss it back to you to unpack some more on another really important working group around this equity and access.
All right, thanks Tim and Carrie for all that great information. I'm sure people's heads are maybe spinning a little bit with everything, but we're going to jump in and continue to talk about our last working group that's involved in the CSA Innovation Network, and that is our equity and access working group. And originally we had titled this working group economic access, and really kind of we're focused on expanding participation in the CSA model across all demographics and all income levels, and really focused on food access. We've kind of shifted that a little bit over the last couple months and 6 months or so of working in this space, to look more at that equity piece and begin to think more about how CSA and the CSA model, and those of us working in the CSA space, can really promote equitable access, not just expanded access. We were also focused initially on really communicating what the value of CSA is, and thinking through folks that may see that may not fully understand what the value is based off of purely just the price. I mean, you see the price tag, you see the upfront costs, and there's a perceived cost related to that that may not always match the actual value that you receive through a CSA share. So thinking through that value of CSA and how you can market specifically based off of the value, some of the things that Tim was talking about where people find value, and how you can bring them into the model, highlighting those specific values of the CSA. So just want to talk through on our website, we have lots of resources. And as Carrie said, we're constantly expanding that, building that out. But this is just a list that this Equity and Access work group developed related to what we feel are really the best resources that are out there. So FairShare CSA Coalition has an amazing food access toolkit that really kind of goes through how they've developed their partner share program, how they've worked to provide CSA shares to folks that on a subsidized rate that makes it more accessible for folks. The other partner in this specific work group, the Hudson Valley CSA Coalition in Glenwood, has really done a lot of amazing market research, as well as the FairShare CSA Coalition. And we have some reports about how that market research has been developed and what the results of that research are. There's a farm in the Hudson Valley region that works with the Hudson Valley CSA Coalition in Glenwood called Soulfire Farm, and they are a farm that is primarily focused on food justice and on equitable access to local food. So they have some great resources. Wholesome Wave is also another organization that's developed programs around something like Double Up Food Bucks, where they kind of incentive programs to double SNAP benefit money. So they have a really great guide around that. And then here in Michigan, we have put together a resource that kind of just highlights all of the different food access programs focused on CSA as kind of that mechanism to provide people just more resources about how to get involved and how to implement some of those programs in their regions. And all of those resources are on our website, and we'll put the website in the chat here at some point to make sure that you have access to that. And as Carrie said, we might do a quick walkthrough of the website here in a little bit as well. So one of the trainings that was developed out of this group was really focused on that communicating the value, and that's just came out of that survey and that research that Glenwood did around figuring out what their core farm values are, and identifying that key messaging that relates to that. So from a recruitment space, communicating the costs and which different markets are more cost sensitive or not, looking at CSA retention and member retention, and then emphasizing that continued communication by the CSA farm to their customers, not just when the CSA is in season, but also throughout the off season as well, to make sure that you're kind of staying front of mind. FairShare has been doing some really important work from an organizational standpoint, and we've been getting up to speed from this from another FairShare employee, Liv, that she's been really helping them organize a Just the Lunch series. So actually doing some professional development around equity, racial equity, white supremacy culture, kind of thinking through how FairShare as an organization is a white-led organization, and how what role they play as an organization in helping to dismantle white supremacy culture, thinking through a racial equity statement, trainings for their board and their staff, and all those resources are available on the FairShare CSA Coalition website. So that's a great place to check out if your organization. I know Extension, that's something that we are working through constantly as an organization as well. So important resources there that have come out of this this working group from the CSA Innovation Network. And again, as I said, we've really shifted our focus as a working group, kind of more towards how do we, as a network, as individual organizations, work in a way that is equitable for all and really provides just access to food. So we're really working to, recognize the historic inequities present in the CSA model. Many times we've heard the history of the CSA that talks about, something that started in Japan and Europe, came over to the northeast part of the States in the 1980s. Well, there's another history of CSA that speaks to the African-American farm history and a gentleman that really was developing something maybe not called community supported agriculture, but basically at its core, that's what it was in the 1960s for Black farmers in the South, smallhold farmers, really focused on sustainable agriculture, community development. So those are things that we're grappling with as organizations that are working in this space. And we really want to be able to just recognize that the CSA model itself has historic inequities, and who has access to CSAs and who can afford to pay that upfront cost has been primarily white middle to upper middle class families. So We really want to kind of bring that to the forefront as we do this work as a national network. And one of the things we're working on right now is the development of a specific statement about, recognition of this history of the CSA model, and kind of how we're going to move forward in a way that provides equitable access to all people. So I did want to talk through some of the things that we do have on our website, and I see Carrie just dropped the link there in the chat, but I'm going to actually just do a quick walkthrough of our website. So here's kind of the landing page for the website. You can see we have an alert up for COVID-19 that links you directly to a document that has been created by some of our network partners. That just is a resource document, provides lots of information. So I encourage you to check that out as well. But you can see here's our website landing page, has a list of kind of all our core partners. That definition of what is community supported agriculture is kind of front and center. We have a way for you to be able to reach out to us for information. Also this, I wanted to point out the subscribe section box here. This is how you can get included on our listserv. So that's a great place to be able to receive updates, resources, emails, that sort of thing, that kind of keep you in the loop as far as what's going on in the national network. So if you click on our resource tab at the top here, that will take you to our resource library, which you can kind of search by the 3 original work groups were economic access, CSA innovation, and CSA in the workplace. And if you click on through, so economic access, click on that, and it's already there, economic access. So these are some of the toolkits and resources that I had mentioned in our top resources there. And when I was talking through, what kinds of things we have available. And this, as Carrie said, this is just a start to our resource library. We have lots more resources that we've identified. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to get them displayed and get them organized on the website. We spent a lot of time as a network initially thinking through what this resource library should look like, how it should be organized, and looked at a lot of other ones out there. And then we identified things we liked and things we didn't like about them. So that's really definitely a work in progress that we're always looking to improve. Also wanted to point out our forum. So we have the CSA forum where you can see there's been a decent amount of activity. We're always looking to get more folks involved. We have people discussing virtual CSA fairs when we all had to pivot, and we'll talk a little bit more about that from related to COVID, just kind of the CSA and COVID impacts and what's going on in that. So that's a great area where if you have questions, if you have resources you want to share, jump on there, sign up. As Carrie said, there's a login sign up button there. It's a super quick login. I think you can just link your Facebook or Google account to that directly, which makes it super easy. So definitely spend some time on the website after the workshop and think through, what how you might want to get involved with that. So kind of some next steps for the Innovation Network. So we have talked about somehow we can form maybe a national CSA gathering next year. We're now not really sure what that's going to look like, but that's definitely something we're thinking through. We've also talked long and hard and thought long and hard this last 6 months about what sustainability looks like for the network. How do we sustain this long term? Obviously, we are grant funded right now. The development of this is grant funded. But we're constantly looking at ways to build sustainability from a network standpoint to make sure that this is something that lasts well beyond grant funding. I did just want to give an opportunity for us to kind of think through and talk through how we as Extension or we as a network have engaged with Extension. So I can start just kind of saying, my role at MSU Extension has been very involved with CSA. I've already talked about how I partnered with an organization in West Michigan called the West Michigan Growers Group that works with CSA Farms and is kind of representative of CSA Farms. We've had this longstanding partnership with FairShare and the CSA Innovation Network. And we're also really focused as an extension system in Michigan on developing our own statewide networking coalition around CSA, and just recently submitted a grant to kind of hopefully be able to build that out and strengthen that, and really take the work that's happening on a national level through the CSA Innovation Network and apply those same strategies, things to our statewide network. Carrie, did you want to share quickly about FairShare's partnership with University of Wisconsin Extension?
Yeah, sure. It's a pretty innovative, exciting partnership that happened quite some time ago now, probably 6-7 years ago. FairShare realized that it would be really helpful to have a staff member really committed to our grower program specifically, and they are also in close contact with Dane County. So Madison is within Dane County, Wisconsin, so they were very close with Dane County Extension. So the director of FairShare at that time talked with the appropriate person at Extension, and I actually don't recall whose idea it was. I actually think that it, from my understanding, was just a shared conversation where they came to this idea jointly, where it manifested into a shared position between a shared, ultimately full-time position, split half-time between Dane County Extension, which is now becoming UW-Madison Extension, and half-time between FairShare. So FairShare actually has a contract with Dane County Extension for this position. So we pay Dane County for half of this position, and it is great because it extends the number of growers that we can reach by proxy of having those relationships through Extension with different growers, and vice versa. So like for the Extension standpoint, it's great because of this really strong connection specifically to CSA farmers. It's just a win-win. There's so many more, there's resources that each organization respectively has and can share with the other. There's a nimbleness with how we apply for grants, and et cetera. It's just, I like the knowledge sharing or knowledge that comes from each of these organizations and shared across to the other. It's a fabulous position, and we have a really great person in that position. So it's a model that we would highly recommend for anybody that can conceive of a way to make that happen within their locality.
Awesome. Yeah, she's great. Tim, did you want to speak just kind of briefly about kind of your role with Extension and how you've kind of contributed to this through that role?
Yeah. So we have in Lexington here, where the University of Kentucky is at, we've got what is called the South Farm. It's a horticulture research farm, and it also happens to house the Sustainable Agriculture Program. And so the farm is a natural platform for holding field days, showing off a lot of production opportunities, working with different scale equipment, how to plan and produce, both in terms of organic production systems, but also planning for CSA. But more recently, we've been involved kind of wearing an extension hat, helping to look at some of the impacts of CSA participation and really helping to try to facilitate some of this employer program. And I think having the university and it's being a land grant based system already gives us a very natural platform to talk about wearing our extension hats, talking about food, communities, wellness, and to have a natural on-ramp then with other folks in the benefits program, the health and wellness space, to talk about ways to link CSA like this. So yeah, a lot of great support for Extension around the CSA space here.
Absolutely. We did want to take some moment to get some feedback from all of you and to hear from what capacity you're currently working with CSA or other direct market farms, thinking through how you see Extension working more broadly with the network that we've kind of just described. So does anyone have any thoughts they want to share or things that kind of come to mind to you initially about your role with Extension, how that connects to the work that we've just described through the CSA Innovation Network? It's a very loud car driving past my house right now. Yeah, does anybody have any initial thoughts?
I was just having a few thoughts. This is Digit, as you went through, which I think this is fantastic stuff and really exciting work. I was wondering if anybody has measured economic, impacts for the small farms or even communities, how, buying locally or how that's impacted an area.
Yeah, that's a great question. I might hand that off to Tim as our resident ag economist.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more that we can do there, but I know in Kentucky, just with our little coalition here itself, just adding the CSA to the workplace program has added somewhere around $750,000 worth of new CSA business to our small handful of farms that are participating here currently.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It's just unbelievable, and the upside potential for it is staggering. And I know I've spent a lot of time up there with Carrie and the FairShare folks, and they collect a lot of great data too in terms of the number of voucher rebate kinds of things that they're participating. One of the statistics that always just stuck in my head that they had shared was that in a community of Madison where you've got, Carrie, I think it's 250,000 people or so, or roughly, 25,000 individuals are consuming food from a CSA. And it's like, what? That many people? But it's just amazing to see the reach and the scope of impact that's having as that program has evolved there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe we'll give you some more time.
Yeah, I was just going to add too, I mean, we've done a lot of work and happy to share. We've got some good resources on the Innovation Network too of some of the impact studies that we've done looking at the kind of benefits that employees have realized through just a lot of studies that we've done. So encourage folks to have a kind of a poke through the website there to look at some of those resources.
Yeah, this is Angela. This discussion has been very great, and I don't even know how to begin answering the discussion questions, but I really appreciate all the resources that you share, because in Arkansas, we did have a boom in CSA offerings in our urban areas back in like 2010 up to 2015, and then for some reason the past 3 years we kind of seen that kind of lull off, and I just don't know if it was farmers pivoting to other restaurant markets and that's what had happened, but we really want to dial back into our small to mid-scale farmers to see, has COVID-19 made you rethink and reanalyze your business model, and are there ways that we can help you, and is a CSA model something that you're interested in? And we are definitely going to share the Innovation Network's resources on our extension page just to get that information out there. So thank you so much for your time today, everyone.
Yeah, well, that provides a nice transition. I did want to keep us going a little bit here, and if there's more things that come to your mind on those questions I just posted, keep thinking about that. But we did want to touch briefly on COVID-19 and on the pandemic's impact on kind of the CSA space. So we've been thinking through all this stuff related to the network, and then we had this global pandemic, and that kind of just shifted everything that we've been working on to really focus on how is this pandemic impacting CSA farms? What can we do as a national network to, allow for those of us that are involved to meet this need and to meet this demand, in a way that where we can learn and share from each other, or share and learn from each other. So just kind of briefly, the things that we've seen as partners, things that we've heard as really that CSA is in a lot of ways, the model itself has benefited from this, where participation is way up. people are, CSA farmers that I work with are selling out, have sold out, were sold out, months before they usually do, are adding shares because they sold out and have more demand and people on waiting lists. So it's really seen as this like, okay, well, maybe this is a way we can really combat, the loss of other markets, like our wholesale markets, our restaurant markets. But it hasn't been met with its own challenges. Obviously, there's increased logistical challenges, as Carrie was talking about, of how to do a CSA drop-off or a CSA distribution pickup with, social distancing and trying to maintain, safety for both the farmer and their employees, as well as CSA customers. And this image here is from a CSA farm in West Michigan that does a year-round CSA, and they kind of transitioned everything away from their choice-based model that they had been using to a prepackaged drive-up, pickup, and minimal contact, safe distance kept there between the customers and the employees. We've seen the news be picking up kind of the growth of the CSA model. Every day, I feel like I see a new article come out from local or national news that said, growing CSA, CSA farmers are adapting to deliver, but they're really seeing this kind of boost in numbers of people participating and people looking to the CSA model as a way to safely acquire food from a local farmer. As far as a network, you saw that initial kind of COVID-19 update and the document that we posted on there. I think that's been really beneficial for us to kind of have a way to provide those resources that are really specific to this current situation. And then our partner, the Community Alliance for Family Farms, has been kind of taking the lead on developing that and then kind of sharing that out. We've really just been, having this network really allowed us to, when we would have our monthly working group calls, we would spend most of the time just checking in on what are you doing right now? How are things going? How are your farmers doing? How is everybody dealing with this? And just allowing that space to talk through things and understand that that we're not, experiencing this alone, that it's happening all over the country and all over the globe, has been really beneficial. And for me personally in my work, and I know speaking to other partners, they have, definitely felt the same way. It's also, having this initial, and maybe Tim can talk a little bit more about this, but having this network already in place has allowed us to be a conduit to the USDA as they're thinking, and the Ag Marketing Service is thinking about, how this is impacting local farmers and what their response looks like in the future. Tim, did you want to say a couple words about that?
Yeah, maybe only to add that, having a national network of folks that are already sharing ideas and have their finger on the pulse of kind of what's happening provides a great platform to quickly gather what are the issues, what are the kind of impacts, what are the magnitude of impacts, what are sort of the patterns of things that we're seeing across CSA, and to be very quickly gather that across folks that have already been working together. If we did not have that network, we wouldn't have been able to do that anywhere nearly as quickly. And it then gives us an opportunity to be able to articulate quickly and clearly and much more accurately to folks like AMS or other USDA entities that are also trying to figure out how to support local food systems. So yeah, having the network's been a big help there.
Absolutely. And just some of the things that individual members have been working on kind of in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've, seeing there's been an increased demand for CSA shares has led a lot of farmers to look at the CSA model, maybe something they haven't done before. So we've had some workshops and short courses developed by some of our partners on just kind of how to get involved with the CSA model. We've looked at really online sales channels that Carrie mentioned, really digging into all of those sorts of things. We've had some focus on food safety protocols for safe CSA distribution and preparing your workforce and your labor force to deal with, different changes and these new kind of safety protocols. Those are just some of the things we've done. Carrie or Tim, did you want to add anything about kind of what you've seen in your neck of the woods?
I just encourage you maybe to I know you've got coming up here very shortly some really cool things that have been shared in terms of across the network. Like with the virtual CSA fair and things like this. So
Yeah, absolutely. So another one thing that we've done is, as this happened, a lot of our in-person CSA fairs that we host within our different regions, those got canceled. All in-person events were canceled. So we took them online. And you can see there's a screenshot from the one we did in Michigan where we had a Zoom meeting set up and people came in and joined the Zoom meeting, and then we had different breakout rooms where people could be assigned to a breakout room based off of their region. And then they were connected with somebody from that region who could then say, okay, this is what you're looking for. Let me help you find a CSA farmer. And we were really noticing in that most of the people that joined that, they were first time, people that were completely new to the CSA model. So that was really cool to see. Carrie or Tim, did you want to share kind of your experiences with that?
I think that's actually a great summary point. It really opened up a whole new world. I guess, we're trying to find silver linings in this pretty, difficult time. And I think that is a definite silver lining. We had been actually planning at FairShare to try a virtual type event for the last 2 years. Just for various reasons. We thought we could reach more people that way, and it would be a lot more cost effective, but we just didn't quite have enough oomph to make it happen. And of course, then COVID again, it just really put us in that position, and we learned so much about how to make it happen. I think that attendance in the future would be much higher. It was like moderate. It wasn't as high as we had hoped, but I guess this is an important point to share. The traffic and buzz that just promoting the event had. I mean, we looked at our website figures. We have a farm search tool. The increase was absolutely exponential, blew it out of the water, the number of people that are coming to our website and looking for a farm. So I think it served its purpose absolutely in getting more signups with farms. And then in terms of the actual attendance at the CSA fair, I think that, we turned it around really fast. I think in like a week and a half, we decided, because of the timing of it and when COVID was happening, we're not going to hold it in person. We're going to do it virtual, and had to, tech solve it and promote it. So yeah, I think in following years, we'll have a higher attendance as well. So
yeah, as we saw exactly the same thing in Kentucky, and I think our experience with our folks here is that we sort of implemented it. Necessity was the mother of invention, but it was so successful, I can't imagine not doing it again next year. So I think it's an idea that's going to be here for us for a while.
Absolutely.
Great impact.
Yeah, and same with us in Michigan. We definitely are planning that as a yearly thing, and modeled our Michigan one after what you did in Kentucky. So we did have some activity on our CSA-IN forum around COVID, sharing resources, sharing some of those plans for virtual CSA fairs, what that might look like. So that was really beneficial for me to get on there and see what other people are doing. And we did, if we have a couple more minutes left, if people want to stay around, I'm happy to stick around for a little while if people are interested in sharing. But thinking through, what has this looked like for you and for your communities? How has COVID impacted the farmers that you work with, or communities that you work with, both from a challenges standpoint and, obviously we've talked through some opportunities as well. And we're also curious, this is something we've been talking a lot about internally in this network and in our organizations, is we see this increased demand in local direct marketed food, but where does that demand go next year, 2 years down the line, and continuing? How do we keep that momentum kind of built and moving forward? So anyone have thoughts around those, or things they want to share about what's happening in their communities or their organizations?
So our biggest pain point is just the logistics of it all, and the farmers trying to navigate what online sales platform works best for them. And then also for our rural farmers who are trying to pivot to more local markets, they don't really have access to solid bandwidth and internet. So that's been a challenge for us, is how do we reach consumers in areas where internet is not a solid option for them. And what does that look like? Because for me, I've grown up in an urban area. I don't even know what that is and what that looks like. So, and then after everyone else shares their thoughts, I had some questions for y'all too about pain points that you're seeing. But we are being challenged by COVID-19. Everyone is, but all of our farmers look at it as an opportunity to expand and diversify their business model. So they are really seeking out those resources. And unfortunately, at our extension, we're just behind in the local food system movement. So this is great information for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been cool to see how farmers have innovated. For me personally, just the way they jumped on it immediately, is transitioning to online sales platforms and figuring it all out as at warp speed. Has anyone else seen similar things or things they want to share, or resources you found to be helpful, kind of navigating all this? I see Digit mentioned in the chat box that your greenhouse is using Square Site for online sales. Yeah, a lot of farmers have success with that. But yeah, everything is new right now, so everything's a challenge.
I think it is new, and we're in a rural part of Oregon, and I'll echo what Angela said. Bandwidth has been obviously at the surface of everything right now, from kids going to school to people transitioning to online business to all of us working from home. And I think it's made, it's just come to the surface how important that is, and connectivity. And it's a problem everywhere. And I know there's been a lot of funding that's been put into some of the different acts, but it's still something that's a work in progress. And I think until that's addressed, we're very limited because of that, especially in times such as these.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't think I would hear bandwidth mentioned as something that we need to work on in a CSA workshop, but these are the times that we live in. Anyone else have any additional thoughts or things that you've seen help your farmers? Any other things related to direct market? I know we've seen examples of some of the work around food access and emergency food access, being looking at CSAs as a way to work on those things as around COVID, and local funds being raised to support farmers, specifically CSA farmers, in that as well. So be curious if anybody has any examples of that as well. I might call on some folks. Jed, I think you joined late, but it'd be great if you could at least introduce yourself and let us know where you're coming from.
Hey, my name is Jed Smart, and I actually work with the Cooperative Extension in Alabama, in Pickens County. We've got a lot of farmers here, and when I read the topic here, I was interested in it because I'm really a bit unfamiliar with the process, so that's why I joined.
Okay.
And I've got somebody at the door here of the office, so I'm going to mute, and I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Did anybody just have any other general questions, things that came up for you, or things you're curious about, maybe related to COVID, not related to COVID, further work that the network is looking at doing? I've still got a little while to hang on here.
I have a question for the Innovation Network. Are there still pain points for your farmers, for your consumers? Is there a pain point that they both share that y'all are still waiting to work on, or a pain point that has arisen because of COVID-19?
That's a good question. And by pain point, you just mean just areas of issues, things that come up?
Mm-hmm. With making the transaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, well, one of the things that I think has been really interesting to see is as Carrie mentioned, the model itself and the innovations that have been really being developed over the last couple of years have really been looking at choice, and providing those market style CSAs or choice-based CSAs where people have the option to, pick a couple different options for what they want. And now with COVID, it kind of turned that all upside down, and really a focus on just, prepackaged, minimal contact. Obviously, you don't want people using things. So it's almost like taking us back a step in that way. And I know there's a couple farms that have really looked at a couple of the online software companies that that do specifically offer a way to provide that choice to their customers. So Carrie mentioned Harvey as being one of those. FarmiGo is another one. I know that one of our CSA farms locally has looked at and is utilizing as a way to still provide that customization and choice for their customers. Is that something that we've seen a lot of customers value, while being able to offer something that is prepackaged?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would add maybe, Garrett, I think one of the biggest challenges our folks are facing is around the issue of distribution. It's a lot of CSAs have been very traditional on-farm pickup and very relational. I mean, the farmers love to be kind of in connection with the shareholder customers as much as they possibly can. But all our goofy social distancing space. I did my own CSA pickup yesterday and had to go in wearing my mask, and everybody else is wearing masks, and everybody's having to stay a certain ways apart. And where it was a market style, so it used to be a market style where I would go through and pick out my own products, but it was all prepackaged for me, and it was just a much shorter transaction, somebody handing me product in a pre-bagged thing that I was just sort of a take and go. But I think what we're seeing is most customers understand that's a limitation right now, and it doesn't have to be necessarily where we're going to be forever and ever. And so, I think the figuring out how to handle appropriate social distancing at pickup points is getting kind of worked out. I think I talked about the worksite CSAs. One of our biggest employers was the city government. It used to be the farms would just bring all their product to City Hall. Well, the City Hall said, no product being dropped here. You're going to have to make other arrangements. And so the farms and the city employees had to kind of work out this other logistic of other drop sites and coordination. It's just forced a lot of new communication to take place. And, our local food systems logistics is impacted everywhere, not just CSA, farmers markets, even, food hub, much less farm to restaurant or farm to school kinds of programs. Everybody's having to kind of feel their way forward on how do we make this work.
Yeah, it's some of our farmers markets, our larger ones, they haven't opened up yet, and our season starts in March. So we've seen some of our farm to table restaurants have pivoted and turned into grocery stores. So they would buy the product that they would have bought normally to prepare their food and just resold it as grocery stores, and people would just order on the phone and then go and pick up. So it's changed a lot for everyone.
Yeah, growth in the pre-order business everywhere for farmers markets, even for the CSA folks that will have some kind of add-on options. I think it's part of everybody being pushed into this virtual world. People are more and more comfortable with doing that kind of virtual transaction stuff. I put that link up there a little bit earlier, but we've done some training through Extension on how to set up a virtual store and how to do online ordering systems, and just kind of scrambling to try to help folks figure out how to do that for the first time as producers. And whether it's a farmer's market, CSA, wherever our farmers are in the direct market space, having to figure out how to do that. And it's been surprisingly effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that link. I'm going to check that out too.
Yeah, one other thing I would mention, we did collect some information in a rapid response survey from farms here in Michigan and from all around the country through the network connections. One thing that came up for a lot of the farms that I talked to or got responses from was the labor costs and the increased logistics and administrative time that's been spent communicating and over communicating to kind of communicate all these different changes. And also with a lot of people joining the CSA that maybe this is their first time, they're new to the model, they need a little more hand-holding, that sort of thing. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that increased investment in labor, whether or not that pays off by maybe an increased share numbers or participation, whether or not those two things kind of balance themselves out long term. Another thing kind of related to the online sales that we've seen, maybe you could call this a pain point, is it doesn't really, the online option doesn't really allow for SNAP sales or for some of the other food assistance benefits to be utilized for that. They're just now piloting online SNAP payments in a couple different states through mostly big retailers like Amazon and Walmart. So for a farmer to, a lot of farmers rely on those SNAP sales at some of our farmers markets, aren't able to take those SNAP dollars for their pre-sold or for their online sales. So that's definitely presented a challenge and something that, I know we've as a network communicated with the USDA and are trying to prepare for when we expect the USDA to loosen those or to adapt online sales for SNAP, maybe for individual farmers to be able to meet those and help farms transition to that when that is an option. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from any other folks? If not, we can wrap up. I did have just a couple other next steps for people. Obviously get on the website that we shared, the CSAInnovationnetwork.org. Lots of great resources on there. Get on our online forum, have questions, engage on there. We encourage you in your roles as extension educators to see if there are other organizations that are non-extension based, maybe nonprofit based, that are working to support CSA farmers in your region. I think we'd be surprised at how many of those organizations and those coalitions exist across the country. So seek those out, see if there's options for you to partner, provide resources, and then first and foremost, or last, support your local CSA farm by buying a CSA share. Tim said he's a member. I'm a member of the local CSA share. I think that's something that we all see as an important way to contribute is by being CSA members ourselves. So walking the walk as well as talking the talk. Tim, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, all good. Thank you, Garrett, for hosting this. Appreciate everybody dialing in and under not the greatest of circumstances to be able to get together and share ideas, but hopefully some good ideas offered here that will be helpful for you all, and appreciate everybody checking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recorded this, so I don't know what NACDEP's plans are for sharing that out, but I'm happy to share the slides with anyone that's interested, and I can put my email in the chat here, so you all have that. Whoops, I don't want to send it to Carrie. So there's my email. If you have any questions or want the slides, happy to share those with folks. So, all right. Well, thanks again for everyone joining, and enjoy the rest of the virtual NACDEP conference experience.